it'd be difficult to argue that there are environmental arguments for Heathrow, but there are considerable environmental downsides. Globally, there's climate change problems. A third runway at Heathrow would astonishingly emit as much CO2 in 1 year as the entire economy of Chile or Portugal. Locally, there's a huge noise problem. A third runway at Heathrow would mean 700 more planes a day using Heathrow. Already, 28% of all people impacted by aircraft noise across Europe live under the Heathrow flight paths. This would make it even worse. And finally, there's a real problem with air pollution. There's absolutely no guarantee that by the time a third runway opens in 2025, if it opens, that the air pollution around Heathrow will be sorted. Heathrow and the government say that a third runway is good for, and sometimes they say it's essential for the UK economy and for jobs. Now, there's no doubt if you build anything the size of Heathrow, it will create some jobs and it will contribute something to the economy. But it's not nearly as clear cut as the government makes out. The figures they're using now is that Heathrow will benefit the economy to the tune of 74 billion, but over 60 years. And what they haven't taken off is the financial costs of the downside. So they haven't subtracted the financial costs of noise, of air pollution, of climate change, or of the construction of the road and rail networks needed for Heathrow. So that brings the cost over 60 years down to much less. In fact, we could probably say that the third runway at Heathrow will contribute less than £1 billion a year to the national economy. Is it worth all the pain? Is it worth all the environmental destruction? I think not. At the moment, it does look as if most Conservative MPs, bar a handful, will support the government in any parliamentary vote. The Liberal Democrats and the Greens have always been against. But what is interesting is where Labour and the Scottish Nationalists stand. There has always been a lot of support in Scotland and in the north of England and Wales for a third runway because they've been led to believe it will lead to jobs in those areas and better connectivity. But something interesting is happening right now because the government has not nailed down the promises it's been making. For example, it's saying that in a new runway, up to 15% of flights will be reserved for regional connectivity. Up to 15% is very different from 15%. And politically, what a lot of the MPs in Scotland, in Wales and the north of England, who might be inclined to support a third runway are saying, actually, do we really want to support this if it doesn't deliver for our area and our constituency? So we might be in the situation when it comes to parliamentary vote where people who will still back a third runway but will vote against the national policy statement that because of the lack of guarantees. It could be that Grayling has messed up once again. The interesting thing is that the campaigns are continuing and the campaigns are feeling strong even though the vote may go against us, because that's not the end of the day. The local authorities, supported by organisations like Greenpeace, will mount a serious and well-funded legal challenge. But beyond that, local campaigners will continue, direct action campaigners will continue, and there are so many potential problems with building a third runway, like, for example, how does the runway get over the M25? What rail schemes need to be built? There are so many potential problems there that the campaigners will continue with the hope and indeed the expectation that in the end they might well win.